Hi guys, I just wanted to go through the test review with you in case we don't get to all of it in class. So the first thing you're going to do is when you're factoring these polynomials, you should recognize that you have a cubed here, a cube function, which means you're going to have to take the cube root and you're going to use your sum or difference of cubes. Okay, so the first thing is the first term is always a cubed and the second term is always b cubed. So in order to figure out what just a is the cubed root of x to the third. So what is multiplied by itself 3 times to get x to the third? And the answer is x. So a is going to be x. B is going to be the cubed root of 27. So I added these up here. So you can see that 3 multiplied by itself 3 times is 27. So B is 3. Then I also need to know what a squared is. So I'm going to take my x times another x. I'm going to get x squared. I need to know what b squared is. That's going to be 3 times 3, which is 9. And then I need to know what a times b is. So x times 3 is going to be 3x. And then I'm just plugging it in. So I had a plus here. So I'm going to use my plus equation, my adding equation. And so I'm going to put a plus b. I'll write it out. A plus b times a squared minus ab plus b squared. Remember SOAP? Same. So this is a plus. Opposite, so this is a minus, and then always positive means the last one's always positive. So I'm just going to plug in my numbers, and I'm going to get x plus 3 times a squared, we said is x squared, minus 3x plus 9, and that is my answer. All right, now look at number 2, and so a is going to be the cubed root of 64 x to the third. And if you look at your cubes, 64 is 4 cubed. So a is going to be 4x, which means a squared is 4x times 4x, which is 16x squared. And then b is the cubed root of 1, which is just 1, which means b squared is 1 times 1, which is just 1 again. And then my last thing is a times b, which is 4x times 1, which is just 4x. So I'm going to use all that information. Now I've got the minus sign. So I'm going to use my second equation. And so I'm going to do a minus b, so 4x minus 1, and then a squared we said was 16x squared. Now I'm changing the sign. It's the opposite sign. ab we said was 4x, and then always positive and 1. One more. We're going to take the cubed root of 125. Oops, 125. And then we're going to take the, and that is going to be 5. We're going to take the cubed root of 729 x to the third. The cubed root of 729, oh, it's not on there. I'll make sure to add that later. That's 9. So the cube root of 729, 9x to the third is 9x. So a squared is 5 times 5. That's 25. B squared is 9x times 9x, which is going to give us 81x squared. And then AB is 5 times 9x, so that is 45x. So then we're just going to plug it in. Now this time we have a plus 1. So we're going to do a plus b, so 5 plus 9x. And it's important you don't change the order. You just leave them exactly like you were given. A squared is 25. We're changing the sign to minus. AB is 45x. And then always positive 81x squared. That is your answer. All right, a couple different types of factoring. We have our x to the fourth. So this means that in a perfect world, I'm going to end up with 4 sets of parentheses. So this is the difference of squares, or difference of 2 squares. So first I'm going to start with x squared, because the square root of x to the fourth is x squared. And then I'm going to take the square root of 625, which is 25. So I'm going to do x squared and 25, and 1 is plus and 1 is minus. Then I'm going to take the square roots of those. So the square root of x squared is just x. I'm going to do 2 sets of parentheses for this first one. Square root of 25 is 5. Since it's a plus, I'm going to have my i's. So this will be x plus 5i and x minus 5i. And then here I'm doing the same thing. The square root of x squared is just x. The square root of 25 is 5. And then 1 is going to be plus and 1 is going to be minus. And then when I go to look at my choices, I see that I have this b is the same as this first one. And then d is the same as my second one. So those are both equivalent. I'm going to do the same thing here. So the square root of 2401 is 49. So that's going to be 49 x to the second. And then the square root of 81 is 9. So I have a 9, 49 x squared, and 9. So one's going to be plus and one's going to be minus. And then the square root of 49 is 7. And the square root of 9 is 3. So this first set is going to give me 7x plus 3i, 7x minus 3i. And then my next set, since it's already a minus here, is going to be 7x plus 3 and 7x minus 3. And that is my answer. Okay, so what happens when we're given the zeros before we start? So we're going to go the opposite direction. Remember that when you have an I, you also have to include the opposite sign. Okay? So because I have 10i here, I also need a negative 10i. So I'm going to rewrite my equation as x minus 10i. And I'm going to go ahead and put these next to each other because I'm going to multiply them first. And then x minus 4. So change the sign. So put them in parentheses. So I'm going to multiply. So I get x squared plus 10ix minus 10ix minus 100i squared. Okay, so these are going to cancel. And then I'm going to be left with x squared. And remember, I squared changes your sign. This is like multiplying by -1. So I'm going to change my sign to plus 100. And then I'm going to bring down my x minus 4, and I'm going to multiply again. So x squared times x gives me x to the third minus 4x squared plus 100x minus 400. And that is my answer. So I look for it on the sheet up here, and I have this one. It should be C. I'm going to do the same thing here. So remember, when you have the square root, it works the same way. So I need the negative square root. So I'm going to start by putting x minus the square root of 2 times x plus the square root of 2, and then x plus 7. So I'll go ahead and multiply. I get x squared plus the square root of 2x minus the square root of 2x minus the square root of 4, which is 2. So these are going to cancel. I'm going to bring down my x squared. And then minus the square root of 4 is just minus 2. And then bring down your x plus 7 and multiply that. So x squared times x is x to the third. Then I get plus 7x squared minus 2x minus 14. That's my answer. So that is going to be A. Alrighty? Let's see what we have. Okay. So standard form, leading degree, coefficient, and behavior. So my standard form always starts with the biggest exponent first. So 6x to the 8th. And then plus 7x squared minus 5x plus 8. So my degree is going to be 8. My leading coefficient is 6. So this is even and positive, which means that I'm going to have this shape and it's going to be facing up. So as x goes to negative infinity, I look at this side and you can see it's going up, so that's going to be going to positive infinity. As x goes to positive infinity, this is looking left and this is looking right. This is also going up, so this is also going to positive infinity. For number 9, let's see, we have the x to the 4th will go first, so 2x to the 4th plus 14x to the 3rd plus 6. So that means my degree is 4 and my leading coefficient is 2, so that's even and positive. So this is going to look like this again. So both of my ends are going to positive infinity. All right, so as I go to the left, it's this side. As I go to the right, it's this side. They're both going up. All right, standard form for this one is going to be 6x to the 5th plus 2x to the 3rd minus 5x plus 5. So our degree now is 5, which is odd. Leading coefficient is 6, which is positive. So odd and positive means it kind of takes this path. Right? It's got a positive slope. So as I look at the left, you can see it's going down. You get the idea. That's negative infinity. As I look to the right, it's going up, which is positive infinity. Standard form for this one, so make sure you take the sign with this. So it's negative 2x to the 3rd plus 5x squared minus 4x minus 3. So my degree is 3, so it's odd again. But my leading coefficient is negative 2, which is negative, which means that it's going to be going downhill like this. And the actual shape doesn't really matter as long as you got the directions going the right direction. So as I look at the left side now, it's going up, which is positive infinity. As I look at the right side, it's going down, which is negative infinity. All right, for this one, before you can start, you have to you have to distribute. So 9x times 7 is 63x. 9x times negative x is going to give me negative 9x squared. So then to put that in standard form, so the degree is going to be 2, so it's even. The leading coefficient is negative 9, so it's going to go down. So it's going to look like this. So my end behavior on both sides is going to be to negative infinity. There you go. All right, one more. So this one is negative x times x minus 2 squared. So let's do x minus 2 squared first. So that's going to give us x squared minus 2x minus 2x plus 4. So that is x squared minus 4x plus 4. And then we're going to multiply that all by negative x. So I'm going to get negative x to the third, and then positive 4x squared, and then minus 4x. So my degree is going to be 3. And my leading coefficient for this one is going to be negative 1. Okay, so if the degree is 3, it's odd. And if it's negative 1, it's negative. So that means that the graph is going to be coming downhill like this. So on the left side, my left arrow is pointing up, so that's going to infinity. On the right side, my arrow is pointing down, so negative infinity. And that's how you do the end behavior. This next question is a little wonky. So the volume in cubic centimeters of a rectangular cage can be modeled by that formula, where x is the length in centimeters. So what values for x what values of x for the model make sense in the interval from 0 to 13? So first of all, you need to understand what the question is getting to. So if x is length, then x can only be positive. The same thing is true for volume. Okay, volume can only be positive. So really what this question is asking is between the values of 0 and 13, where is your graph positive? And the answer is it crosses the x-axis here, and it goes up and over, and then it crosses the x-axis again. So it's only positive from 2 to 12. So your interval is going to be 2 to 12. And that is your answer. And that's it. So really, that's all the question was asking. All right, so matching graphs. So there's a few different ways to approach these. You know a few things. You know even and odd, and you know x-intercepts. So depending on what you're given, this is kind of what you want to look at. So you have a negative here, you have 2 x's, and then 1 more x, so you have 3 x's. So this is a degree of 3, and it's negative. So the general shape of your graph is going to look like that. Okay? And then on top of that, you can also set these equal to 0 and know that you have an x-intercept at negative 4 and an x-intercept at 3. So then you can look and see, where does my graph cross the x-axis and which one has that shape? Well, the only one that even has that shape is E. So we're going to say that one is E. Okay, the next one, all you're given is end behavior, but you see how they're both positive. So that means that graph has the shape of this. They're both going to positive infinity. So that one is either going to be B or C, but we're not sure which one yet. So we're going to skip it for just a second and come back to it. This next one has a degree of 3, and it's positive, which means this is going to have the shape like this. Oops. And I only have one of those, so that is D. And I don't know the x-intercepts, and I could find out, but I don't want to that much, so I'm just going to leave it at that. And then the next one I know is a degree of 2, and it's positive, and it has an x-intercept at 0 and 2. So the C is the only degree of 2, right? You know, this is a degree of 2. This is a degree of 4. We don't know what degree this is because that's just a bunch of wiggles. This is a degree of 3. This is a degree of 3. And this is a degree of 2. Okay, so you could start by labeling your graphs, honestly, and finding out where your intercepts are on each graph. So this one has one at 0 and 2, so that's our winner. So that's going to be C. So there's a bunch of different ways you can approach this from the information that you know. The next one, this one is going to negative infinity on both sides, so it's going to have that general shape. And there's only one of those, so that's going to be F. And then finally, you have this last one where you have a degree of 2 and 1 and 2 more, so that is a degree of 5. So that's odd. And the only 2 graphs we have left are this one and A and B. Well, we already said that over here it could be B or C. Here, the degree of 5 should just be enough because and it's positive. Sorry, all the coefficients are positive. So it's going to have a general shape of this, okay, with more wiggles. So that's A. So that's kind of how I approach it. To me, that's just the easiest way to do it. That's all the information that you know, and it's just a matter of matching up what you see. Okay. And then lastly, on what interval is the graph increasing? So it's going up from here to here, which is at -1. And then it goes up again from 0.2 to infinity. So remember that it's looking for the x coordinates. So you have infinity and negative infinity. So this first section is negative infinity to -1. And then it's also going to be 0.02 to positive infinity. And we're not going to be too picky about the parentheses and the brackets, but technically this should be a parenthesis and this should be a bracket, like that. On the test, it's all parentheses, so you just kind of got to take it for what it's worth. Okay? Over what intervals is it decreasing? So now it's going from -1 to 0.2 down. So -1 to 0.2. And that's the only interval where it's decreasing. Over what interval is it positive? So here is our axis. So I want to know, where is it positive? So where is it above that? So really, it crosses the x-axis here, and it goes up from there. So I'm going to say that it is 2 to positive infinity. And then what interval is it negative? So it's negative from where it begins. It's negative here, it's negative here, and it's negative here until it gets to 2. So on our interval, we are going to say from negative infinity until 2. And really, these two should match up to make all of your points on the x-axis. What's the relative minimum? That is going to be right here. So that is 0.2, -8.4. So this is actually a point on the graph. Okay. All right, and then last but not least, which of the following statements are true for the graph? So the interval of decrease is negative infinity to 1.8. So it's decreasing from there to there. So that is true. It's from negative infinity to 1.8. So we're going to say, yes, this one's true. The leading coefficient is negative. If the leading coefficient was negative, it would have this shape instead. So that is not true. The y-intercept is 2. Here's your y-intercept. And that is clearly not at 2, so that's not true. And then the interval of negative x values is from 1 to 2.2. So negative x values, here's your x-axis. So from here to here, it's negative, and that is true. From 1 to 2.2, it is negative. So I have this and this are true. So 1 and 4, so that would give me B. Okay, and then for the polynomial function, which statements are true about the graph? So just looking at it real quickly, this should be, it's a second degree, and it's negative. So that means my general shape should be like this. And then I should have x equals 2 and x equals negative 4 as my roots. So let's take a look at this. Okay, there's a lot of things wrong with that graph. So the student did not graph the function correctly. That's not true. The graph and behavior correctly. That's not true. The student did not graph the zeros of the function correctly. He should have 2 and negative 4, so that is correct. The student should have graphed a parabola instead. That's also true. And the student should have graphed an odd degree polynomial instead. That's not true. All right, so you should have 2 answers for this. It's C and D. Okay, I think that's everything. So if you have any questions, just let me know.